Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for June 3rd, 2020, recorded around 2:10 p.m. Eastern Time. Well, taking a look here at the latest sea surface temperature anomalies, what's going on now is that we're actually seeing a more significant decline in the ENSO conditions out here, heading towards a La Nina pattern. And again, this takes time for the atmosphere to roll over into this base state because we are coming out of a ENSO warm neutral environment heading into a La Nina environment that takes a little bit of time for the atmosphere to actually roll over to that base state. So there is going to be a lag, about 3 to 5 months of a lag period before we actually transition into that La Nina pattern, if that's indeed where we're heading. Now, here in the Atlantic Basin, something interesting is going on, and it has been going on now for the last several weeks. You see this warmer pattern setting up here in the tropical Atlantic and in the MDR. That is now a sign of a classical AMO, Atlantic multi-decade oscillation, that's occurring across the area. Now, we have been in a phase 2 pattern, sort of a phase 2/phase 1 pattern over the last several weeks, here favoring the subtropical portions of the Atlantic in the extreme southern main development region out here in the southern Atlantic. Now we're starting to see this gradual warming out here in the traditional AMO phase 1 region, where we would typically see AMO phase 1 warmth. And that has implications in terms of the peak of hurricane season this year. And we saw this almost in 2018, where we saw almost an additional spike in sea surface temperatures by the time we got to the peak of season that significantly warmed the main development region of the Atlantic. That is now occurring again out here in the Atlantic Basin as well. And if you actually take a look here at the sea surface temperatures now, this is for the western part of the basin here. Again, generally we've been focusing on saying here south of 30 and west of 50 west here. And again, that remains true so far, that we have this concentrated area of warmth that's down here in the Caribbean. And the Caribbean is also above the long-term average. This whole part of the basin is at least a half degree to a full degree Celsius above the long-term average. That has implications if any tropical cyclones were to develop in this region and take advantage of this water and the upper ocean heat content that's around here. You know, that is something that has to be mindful. Again, this is where the majority of people live, and these water temperatures are now supportive of tropical cyclones. So again, something to pay attention to. Where Tropical Storm Cristobal is, that did make landfall earlier this morning, water temperatures in this region are 28, 29 Celsius, more than supportive of tropical cyclones. And if we take a look here at the latest upper ocean heat content values, this was last updated this morning. Again, generally, as you start getting up in towards the greens, yellows, and oranges, that's the more warmer water that you have at depth, the more latent heat release processes that you have. That combined with the sea surface temperatures that we currently have makes this area more than supportive of tropical cyclones, at least in the thermodynamic environment. Now, the shear is still a little strong, but theoretically, this could support tropical cyclones if the shear wasn't, if the interseasonal state of the shear was lessened across that region. Now, also taking a look here, this last several days or so, but again, this is the intertropical convergence zone down here, and you notice that warmth. It's definitely starting to build northward, and that's going to continue to build northward as we head towards the peak of season. Again, for reference, if tropical cyclones don't develop out here, well, where are they going to develop? They're going to develop out here where people live. And again, that's also going to prevent these tropical waves from turning off, out here. So theoretically, if the MDR is not supportive of tropical cyclones, which it will be, but if it isn't, hypothetically, these systems are not going to have the opportunity to turn away and out to sea like we saw with Lorenzo last year. That was a Category 5 that impacted the Azores, but it turned out away from the majority of the land. So again, it's just something to monitor is as we head towards the peak of season, what's the MDR like? And that's going to give us a better understanding of the actual season ahead. Now, taking a look at the Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico regions, again, this area is certainly more than supportive, and where Cristobal is, that's expected to reemerge. We certainly have the upper ocean heat content in this region combined with some of that, the sea surface temperatures in this region more than supportive of tropical cyclone development and maintenance across that region. Now, this is something interesting. We haven't touched on this in a while, but this is the Saharan Air layer. This measures the Saharan dust in the atmosphere, last updated yesterday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on June 2nd. Again, this area right here is all the Saharan Air, but you notice that it's not super widespread. Now, from time to time, you will get these widespread outbreaks that have a lot of dust in the atmosphere that can temporarily hinder warming of the Atlantic main development region. We haven't seen that this year. We saw that very significantly in 2018. We had very significant Saharan Air last year, this time of the year last year. Those all play a very big factor in exactly how warm the MDR can get. And we've started to see it warm as a result of less and less Saharan air that's blocking out the sun particles. And we have these tropical waves that are coming off here. Now, they're still at relatively low latitude. This is roughly the 10 north line right here. These are roughly still these lower latitude systems, so they're going to have less and less Coriolis effect here. But again, these tropical waves are coming off, and they are being sustained by the fact that the Saharan air is not as strong and prevalent. Now, again, like I said, from time to time you will get the outbreaks, but the Saharan air has certainly been less this time of the year, even compared to 2017, where we had that active season. The Saharan air isn't as much right now. Now, is that an indicator of what's to come? Probably not, but it's something interesting to point out as, kind of the keys to the game, per se, will you, as we head towards the peak of the hurricane season. Now, as we talk about tropical systems, this is Tropical Storm Cristobal down here in the Bay of Campeche that made landfall earlier this morning around 13 Zulu time here in the Yucatan and in the Mexican coastline regions. 50 miles per hour with a pressure of 996 millibars. This is expected to weaken over the next day or so into a tropical depression before re-strengthening out here after the next 48 hours into a tropical storm. Now, again, there's a lot of uncertainties going in with this situation. One of the main factors of this is how weak does this actually get and how far inland does this get before re-emerging onto land. If some of the modeling is correct, this may completely die out and we may be left with a new tropical cyclone to develop, or just a weak leftover of Central American gyre that lifts north over the next several days or so. If this does not weaken as much and does end up re-emerging as predicted, it could be a stronger tropical storm by the time it reaches the United States Gulf Coast. Where exactly does this go once this reemerges is anyone's bet right now. We do not have, as great of a certainty as where this is going to go. There's a lot of uncertainty regarding the future right now of Cristobal. Again, this is expected to remain over land for the next about 36 to 48 hours. After tomorrow night and in through the day on Friday, this is likely to reemerge as whatever remnants of Cristobal is left over and begins the long haul off towards the north. Now, again, the speed, the strength, the location, the timing, that is the big question mark as to what impacts are going to be felt for the United States Gulf Coast. The only almost certainty that we have is along the Gulf Coast, there will be very heavy rainfall over the next several days, which could lead to the potential for flash flooding. That's the one thing that we do have a certainty on at this point in time. But again, this could be a stronger tropical cyclone, maybe a hurricane in the Gulf. This may be only a tropical depression, or it may not be anything by that time. So again, it's very important to understand as we go forward, there is significant uncertainties here in the track forecast beyond the next 48 hours. Even right now, there is some uncertainty even within the next 24 hours. So very important to understand that this is a very complicated setup. And if we take a look here at the 850 millibar vorticity, or the spin in the atmosphere about 5,000 feet off the ground, the reds and whites here are the more cyclonic spin, the higher spin you're getting. This is the area that we're watching here. This is Cristobal that has now moved inland. And again, we're going to be watching exactly how this evolves over the next several days. Right now, it's still a fairly decent vorticity signature, There is a little bit of stretching out that's going on here on the southern flank, but for the most part, we have an area of concentrated vorticity right now that seems to be establishing or has established itself. There's also a wave out here, some energy out here in the southeastern Caribbean as well. And if we take a look at the wind shear right now, again, out here in the Gulf, there is still a lot of wind shear across this region that will be slowly declining over the next while as we get this anticyclone to move generally to the north here. But again, it's going to be displaced over the system. There will be shear building over top of it. There's going to be a lot of hard uncertainties that we don't have right now in terms of the keys to the game for Tropical Storm Cristobal. So there's a lot of uncertainties going forward in the track forecast and intensity as well. And if we take a look here at the GFS forecast, this is out to the next 48 hours on the 12Z run. Again, this is looking at the 850 millibar vorticity from tropicaltidbits.com. Once again, we notice how this is a fairly broad area of circulation, and the GFS forecast, even to the next 84 hours, has this rather broad, almost subtropical-ish look to it. So again, it's very uncertain as to where this thing and how strong it might be. And one of the reasons, we'll take a look at what's actually impinging on the system right now. This is the 200 millibar winds here. Again, we're watching this Central American gyre, and these winds are actually pushing a lot towards the south and west here. We also got this ridge of high pressure that's sitting across the area with its anticyclonic flow that's also creating the larger pattern that is creating this anticyclone that is displaced, but to the west of the system. That's creating some wind flow that's trying to pinch this system down towards the south. And that's one of the main reasons why this system really isn't getting going at all, and it's actually moving south. We have weak flow aloft right now. There is a troughing that is expected to move in here over the next 48 hours, and if we move that to hour 48, you notice this trough is kicking in here, but there's a lot of shear that's being impinged on the system now coming out here of the south and southwest here. That's going to be impinging a lot of shear, and eventually, if we move it out to hour 84, there is an anticyclone that tries to develop out here with an area of high pressure that's going to be impinging some southerly shear on this system. That's also going to help to entrain some dry air into the system and shear it off. As such, the GFS forecast out to the next 102 hours has this as a very weak system, only about 998 on the GFS. So maybe a tropical storm on the GFS, but again, here on the European forecast out to the next 72 hours, this is a much stronger system. And by hour 96, this is a much more stronger bona fide tropical cyclone and making landfall here along the Louisiana coastline here. And we'll just take a look here at the 850 millibar winds and MSLP. This is almost a borderline hurricane by the time it does get there. Pressure's actually dropped 989 to 990. So again, if the European model was correct, there could be a stronger system here. Now, the models are going to disagree. There's a lot of uncertainty. And if we take a look here at the European Ensemble forecasts here, this was last updated as of 6Z this morning, or about 1 o'clock this morning. Again, most of the modeling is suggesting something here along the Gulf Coast. Again, the main message is anywhere from Texas to the Florida Panhandle needs to be paying attention to the progress of Cristobal. Most of the modeling here is indicating a very weak system, only about 39 to 73 miles an hour. Some of the modeling is a little bit stronger than that. Some of the modeling does suggest a hurricane. Some of the modeling suggests a stronger system. Again, it really is up in the air right now. The main focus is how far inland does the system get over the next several days or over the next day or so, and how well intact is the core of Cristobal as it moves back over water over the next 48 hours. That's going to be the real keys to the game. And again, right now we're just watching the progress of the system. No watches or warnings or advisories right now have been posted for the Gulf Coast of the United States, but we will continue to monitor the progress of that. All right, so that's going to be the keys to the game over the next several days or so. Again, I will be back here with constant video updates. Again, I will be posting some video updates here later this evening on Twitter as needed and stuff like that. So I'll make sure to put that link there in the description as well. Again, I hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon and evening, and I'll see you guys here bright and early tomorrow morning.